Today's topic, as I was saying when we were chatting briefly earlier on, I was looking to do our usual tarot Christmas social, but then I realized that doing it in December would probably be, most people would be too busy. I mean, I know that I have got the first 2 weeks for myself busy, and then after that it's just too close to Christmas, to be honest, even to get a place, if anything else. So since our last sort of November meetup falls on the 26th, I thought instead of doing a topic that day, we can just do a social, as we always have done, with some prizes, a quiz, chocolates, whatever I can find and bring. It's so if it's okay, then I'll just post it up in the next couple of weeks. And then what we will do, will be take a break for the whole of December, come back the first or second week of January, in the new year. Gosh, this year has gone so fast. It really has. Just to talk about seeing the new year is only like 3 months away. Beside that, nothing else. So today's topic was the debate between free will and between free will or fate. I didn't do a handout because I wanted to keep it more as a discussion topic as such. So all I did was put down some bullet points for discussions here for myself and you as well. First of all, of course, the first question would be, what is free will? What do you think? What do you see as free will? What does free will makes come up to mind to you?
Your actions from your mind, you decide you're going to do something?
From your mind?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I guess it's about conscious decisions as opposed to like acting through habit and reflex and all that kind of thing.
But then, okay, if that's conscious, then fate is unconscious? As in, predisposed?
You're doing something out of habit? You're just doing it without thinking?
Well, we all have our own sort of patterns, right? So I guess, like, especially when we do readings, especially when we do predictive readings, I personally see it as, if you go along the same patterns as the way you are now, this is likely to happen. So it's kind of fate, in inverted commas in that sense. But obviously we can change stuff when we consciously make the decision to do things differently.
The way I envision free will is the way that I have the power, I am in power as such, to change things if I want to. And someone mentioned to me a few years ago, I think it was, during a similar discussion, the only thing you cannot change in life is death, with which I disagreed, because you cannot change the fact that you're going to die, but you can change death. And for example, if you were like, I don't know, different situations, say if you're a drug addict, and obviously you might not have as long a life as if you're someone that looks, you can sort of not change it like that, but you can change it. But and I agree with you when you say that it's the mind and it's, you make a conscious decision to change. So, fate. For me, I envision fate as when I grew up in Italy in very superstitious environment, where my grandma, especially, bless her, she believed everything was already predisposed and was very, very superstitious. So the word fate to me conjures something that I cannot change, that I have no control over it at all. It's almost like, okay, I'm here, I don't know when, but this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and there's nothing I can do about it. How do you see fate? That's all right.
Like for someone growing up in maybe a poor country and feeling like that's their life, they can never get out of it, and not doing anything to change their potential or basically change their potential.
Or like they're born with a certain purpose and they can't change it.
Yeah,
so.
like.
There's no way out. No way out. You've got to be in that situation.
Okay, so if free will is a conscious decision to change matters and situations and outcomes, and fate isn't, how would you relate that to tarot in a reading sense? Because obviously we're all different, so some of us might believe we all have free will, some of us might think, oh no, I don't really have a choice in what's going to happen. But as readers, even professional or not, we all read differently. Some of us perhaps read more intuitively than others. How do you apply that to reading? Because yes, you can say, oh, I'm a technical reader and I'm looking at the cards as they are and just follow the meanings. But, and I have a great example that I got from a friend last Saturday when I was talking to her. We were talking about clients and different reactions when you do readings and how sometimes it gets very difficult. Even if it's a friend, it doesn't have to be a particular client. In this case, it was a client, and my friend was in Canada, and he does intuitive readings and he does predictions because he is a psychic as such. So he got this lady and she goes to him and she sits down, she gives him the money and he says, well, okay, I'm going to read for you. She said, tell me about the prophecy. And he says, what prophecy? She says, well, the prophecy that I am going to be in charge of the world. And then she proceeded on going into something. To my friend, it became clear that the person obviously had some issues. It still did the reading, as professional as you would. Obviously, it didn't encourage her or anything, but it still did the reading. In this case, you would see it as someone that wants a predictive reading. Whatever idea she had, she wants the predictive reading. So how do you apply, if you wish, your belief of free will or fate when you read?
When I do readings, I tell them that nothing is set in stone. The cards are guidance, and it's up to you whether you listen, you take on board my information that I give or not. And the tarot cards are for, like information to help you make an informed decision. So, and I don't sit in judgment, and I don't say don't do this or do this, but I give them the choice, and that's their free will. They're always in control of their life. And so I'll give them like an example, saying, if a guy comes up and he's got some issues, like a chemical dependency on drink or drugs, or maybe addictive gambling, what I'm saying to you is, and I'm not saying don't go out with this guy, what I'm saying is you need to be aware, and it's your choice if you go out with this person. Could be that he's going to end up like two-timing you, you could get hurt, he's not the love of your life, and it's down to you to, make the decision of what you do. And I tell people that they can ignore everything that I say if they want to, or they can just pick bits out, and they won't remember everything, but then, it's when they begin to remember certain things, like if they go for an interview and I think I can see a woman there, she's over 40, she's dark eyes, dark hair, dark skin, she can be a cow, for example. Now it's up to you whether you take this job, you know that, you're forewarned, and you think, well, I know she's like this, I can deal with this, or no thank you, I'm not going to take the job.
That's from a free will point of view.
Yeah.
Obviously, yes. So, but when you, in general terms, actions have consequences. So when you perform a reading, you're performing an action as such. How much do you think either your belief or the person you're reading for belief can influence the card? And by that I mean, for example, a lot of people say you can tend to project on the cards when you do readings. Obviously, when you draw the cards, it's a random draw, but you can project by wishing for an outcome, wanting an outcome, or for whatever reason. Wouldn't that affect the free will as aspect of it as well, you think? If you project. Or can you make me an example?
Couldn't the projection be interpreted as a choice, or you exercising your free will in a way? Can be seen that way?
But it comes more when you do intuitive readings, I suppose, because then if you see the emperor, for example, in a certain position, I was talking to Louise last night, and she was like, I can't do with this guy, to me he's too rigid, he's too... And I'm like, I don't see him like that at all, intuitively. So we're all different in what we see, and that also changes when we read. But if you're faced with someone that believes their fate is predestined, and you're doing what, say, you're a reader and you're saying, okay, well, you have your choice, how is that influencing, you think, the person per se?
Well, what I think about that is that let's imagine you're given an opportunity to make a decision, or say what your decision would be before the card reading takes place. Most of the time it's that decision or that line of reasoning that will be the absolute massive projection of how all the other players in the scenario you're in will play their roles. Because people tend to see themselves as having far more agency than they do. They think that people who they know well and like and trust and stuff will play their roles out like the pawns on the chessboard, and just everything will go very smoothly. Tarot to me is actually, maybe a lot more empirically based, I believe, than a lot of people give it credit for. What you have is a sort of a system of coding how people really are in relation to one another. So when the reading takes place, you will, cards will come down, we'll see the well-known characters that we know, we'll identify the people we know in that layout and say, oh, that's him, that's him, that's him. But the cards will have knowledge of how people really behave based on hundreds and hundreds of years of real experience that have evolved into the symbols of the cards, millions of interactions between people that are about how people really are rather than how we wish them to be. So, and we will already know that. It will already kind of spark resonances with us that will come up from our unconscious knowledge, and that unconscious knowledge becoming conscious will mean that the way that we see things falling out will be less of the degree of projection that we're putting on that prediction, if you like, will be less than it would have been if we've rolled the whole thing through using our quote-unquote conscious mind or free will. So, what we think of as our free will is underinformed. It seems very logical, but there's lots of stuff we're concealing from ourselves because it's uncomfortable and makes us feel powerless. When the cards say their thing, they will be more, they will often give us unsettling, they will tell us unsettling things about how people actually are at their best and their worst. And that will give us a more informed, more realistic view of how a particular situation will evolve.
Yes, because, the cards are straightforward. They're not doing two meanings and sarcasm. Well, they can do sarcasm. They can do sarcasm, but
they can have double meanings too.
Very many meanings, but that doesn't diminish. The fact that the cards are very rich in symbolism, and they spark off our sort of poetic, creative, mythological, dreamy minds, doesn't mean that that's not true, doesn't mean that that's not valid. Actually, it gives us a wider space of possibilities and considerations to have in mind.
I prefer the idea of free will myself, as such. I mean, I would feel that if I was a believer in predisposed fate, then you're not in control.
Well, I like to put forth this question because it's kind of come up, is that, because Mike has brought up that the cards are quite objective and they're very independent from our own projections in a way, if I'm right, in some sense.
No, that's not quite what I'm saying. I'm saying the cards have more possibilities encoded in them.
Okay.
So when we look at them, we see a wider space of potentialities than we would if we, like I was giving an example of, say, somebody kind of told a story about how they hoped a situation would turn out,
Mhm.
they'd be putting tons of projection on that.
Okay.
When the cards have said their thing, then those projections become more questionable. And
Okay.
people will think, well, you know what, I do have agency in this situation, but I'm certainly not the only one. There's my uncle, the King of Swords, who has his view, and that probably he'll stand in my way, or
Okay.
whatever. Yeah?
Well, the thing I tried to contrast
Yeah.
Anton's view with yours, which arguably I got wrong, but is that Anton, because I get the feeling that, you know, we kind of have our beliefs and we interpret whatever based on those beliefs. We can interpret the cards based on those beliefs, like our belief of free will, for example. I wonder, is there a case of the cards do their own thing where they just say stuff as is, regardless of our beliefs? Because I often find the cards like, sometimes they say, oh, if you do this, this will happen, or if you do that, that will happen. But then other times it will say for a client or for you, it would be like, this will happen, regardless.
Certain things are unavoidable in life, I guess. You know, they might take longer. If you're in a situation where you're going to quit your job and you can't quit your job, then eventually it's going to go, from one way or another, as an example. Is that what you mean? Or like some situations I feel can be unavoidable.
I think that you're dealing with time, though, because you already set yourself up through what you've done so far. You know what I mean? Like, you've done all these actions before you did the reading that are probably already leading you to the outcome.
Okay.
Whereas if you ask the same question but in a longer length of time,
It'll be different.
you'll have more chances to change things because...
Okay.
Well, it depends also what it is.
Yeah.
What's the situation? It could be like, okay, we don't do health reading really, but it could be an illness. And you can change perhaps the way you tackle the illness, but you can't change the illness itself. I wrote down the question, I think, unless I'm getting confused, it's similar to what you were saying, Henry. What I wrote was, is it possible, if it is possible to predict accurately to an extent, how does that affect a person's free will? I'm interested in also the relation of me saying to you, look, if you take this job, this will happen. Rather than take your approach, we'll say, look, if you take this job, but then you have the choice to do this. If I, as a person, say, I'm a believer in fate, or I'm predicting, and I say, okay, look, the cards are saying that's set. That's it. So if I tell you, how much am I affecting your free will? You might be a free will believer, you might not, but you're standing in front of me, and I've just told you that if you do that, that is going to happen. How is that going to change your free will? Are you going to...
Well, even though you might have influenced that person's decision, it's still their decision.
Yes, of course.
So
but how
the fact that they're still doing the choosing, it means that it's still their free will to choose to heed your advice. They can ignore you.
Does it also change depending on how you respect that person's opinion or what that person says? So if it's someone that you were like...
regardless of, whether I take your advice, it's still that person's choice to take that advice or not. So again, that doesn't infringe on the free will.
Right. I see what you mean.
I think what I'm getting at is something a little bit wider, perhaps, which is more the relationship that we have with the people that we read for, even ourselves, and us as readers. By saying you influence, obviously, everyone reacts to certain action different ways. So you could say, well, she's saying that, but I'll do what I want because that's my choice. Another person could say, fine, I won't do anything because she just told me that that's going to happen. I'll accept it. Another person could get really worried, go home and get really worried about it, going, oh my God, but
Or on the opposite of, you've got really good news and you choose not to do anything, but you don't
act on it,
and so nothing happens.
To me, it's exactly like Christmas Carol. During the night, Scrooge is visited by three ghosts: the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas future. The ghost of Christmas past takes him right back to when he was 18, and he wanted to marry the girl who was much richer than he was, and she turned him down, interestingly because he was too mean, but the subtext is maybe because he wasn't rich enough. So, broken-hearted and bitter, Scrooge sets off on this money-collecting expedition that's going to turn him meaner and meaner and meaner and nastier and nastier and nastier until he's got a huge pile of cash and nobody likes him. He's making everybody's life around him in misery. And, you know, he's blocked all that deep past out of his mind. And then, in the middle of it, he gets the visit of the ghost of Christmas present, who takes him to visit his former business partner, who was the nice guy in their team, and he's in hell now, counting the chains of all the misery that he's caused and all the misery that he's caused himself. And then he sees his own funeral and the funeral of the little boy who's the son of his only employee and only person he ever talks to. And then he changes his mind. And he says, "Tell me, Spirit, are these things that must come to pass, or are these things that will only come to pass if da-da-da?" And Spirit says nothing. Because they are the inevitable consequences of a series of events that Scrooge set himself up on as a result of an injury to his psyche, if you like, and how that will naturally unfold given that chain of events. It's just like putting three tarot cards down past present.
Actions, that's what I was saying, actions, consequences.
Yeah.
In a sense. Whatever you're going to do, whatever you're going to take on with it, will have an impact and a consequence. Which is why I was saying, how much are you going to influence this free will, if you want, to another person? Can you? Think even in terms of non-tarot. Think how people can react when you give advice. You know, you can be concerned, but you can be giving totally out of goodwill, totally the wrong advice. It's a bit of a...
Yeah, but it depends on your own philosophies, I guess. Personally, I feel everyone's responsible for their own actions, regardless of whose advice you take or ignore.
I do too, but we're all different.
So, I mean, yeah, but again, like, regardless of what you advise, it's still that person's problem, really, what happens, you know. Because if you worry too much about it, you know, you worry about giving wrong advice, and then you screw up your own quality of your reading, so you can't worry too much about it, really. You just have to trust that person will, you know.
So if you were to alter an outcome, how would you do that? In tarot, that is. Not in life.
Well, I've seen this interesting idea where, like, if you get some cards and it's an outcome you don't like, so you deliberately find the cards you do like, put them down. Okay, this will happen. That's a legit way of like manifesting things.
Maybe it's understanding the card itself, though, because if you're only looking at the negative side of the card, which you do need to see. But how do you get through? Because I think each card has its own story of how to get through that card. And so understanding the card itself can help you change.
It also depends from the deck.
Yeah.
And some decks are different. I was going through the Anna Kay last night. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that particular deck, Anna Kay. And my friend won it. Yes, and I said, you open it up, you've got to take out the Ten of Swords. That card is the best card ever. Ten of Swords make people go, ooh. You know, I don't feel it as a negative card, but it's a difficult card in a sense to go through, I guess, sometimes. In that particular deck, you see the person on the floor with the 10 swords and the blood, as usual in the Rider-Waite imagery. But then you see not the ghost, you see the same person pictured in the horizon, walking off like that. He's got a little blood trail following him, but he's walking off. And it's almost like he's saying, you know what? Tough. I don't care. I'm going. And I feel that's the most empowering Ten of Swords I've ever seen. It's saying you've gone through a lot, you're hurt, tired, but you still got the stamina, and that's the horizon, you're going to be all right. You don't see that in many decks. So that's what also that could make a difference as well in wanting to change an outcome, I guess. You might take that more positively than some Ten of Swords where they look really negative, as an example. I mean, what are your experiences?
Scylla's card too, the Ten of Swords that she had posted online.
I can't remember it.
Shows a king dead on the ground, and these riders with their swords up in the air.
It's a revolution.
Did they have swords up in? Yeah, it was like a revolution. They killed the king.
Kill the tyrant.
Had this different energy to it, where
That was more happy.
More
Happy destruction.
But you could take it either way. You could look at it at the side of the riders, or you could look at it as the side of the dead king. So it was interesting.
It's perception, isn't it? It's how you perceive. Which is why I don't agree with some people when they have views. They say, "Oh, you can't use certain decks because the imagery is too harsh and negative." This is life. I mean, life is good, and instead we all go through good things and bad things. So you've got to take the good with the bad.
Well, part of free will is you can stuff can happen to you, and you might not be able to control. But how you take it, that is still your choice, more or less. So again, even I mean, there's this dichotomy between fate and free will, as if they're opposing things. Well, no, there can be fate, but it's still your free will to how to deal with it. They exist at the same time in a way.
Well, you can't change either, really, can you? You can't change. Like I was saying, some things are inevitable, but you can change others, but you can't change all of them.
Yeah, because everyone's doing their own thing, using their own free will to manifest stuff. So
as readers, in your experience of doing readings, either for yourself or for others, how do you think? What is your experience with this? Have you encountered the example I made with my friend, where he had a particular customer that was obsessed with this prophecy? That was a different matter, but it's just an example. So, in your experience, have you encountered anything like it, or difficult situations for yourself where you were not unable, but maybe found very difficult to change the outcome, alter the outcome, or you felt that you couldn't, or you felt that you could very easily?
So what is the outcome that you're looking to change now, and why? Because, I mean, you're talking about a situation really where somebody's a bit disturbed.
Yeah, but I'm saying that was just an example.
Well, just a detail, but it's not really, is it? That's the crux of the matter. If somebody's very delusional, and they say, how's this prophecy of my, ruling the world coming? How far am I on a scale of 1 to 10? And you could say, if it was a casual conversation, you'd say, well, you're completely bonkers, which is a good start. But there's a, what cards did you turn up, by the way? Interesting.
I don't know. I didn't ask.
Okay. Have you heard the expression character's destiny?
No.
I don't know if you said that, but it seems to be that, for me that's a real theme with this sort of exploring free will and determination within the context of the tarot, because as I said before, to me they're character cards, really, aren't they? They give you a shorthand of what your character is, what the dynamics of characters between people are, how characters evolve, and what the characters of other people in your space are. And somebody that, in such a chaotic state, it would be quite you'd imagine something quite vivid would come out, wouldn't you? It's not, I mean, most people with that kind of level of delusion, but it doesn't.
I mean,
The
I had
outcomes aren't
something
good.
similar a year and a half ago. Not the person didn't do that, but it was someone I was worried about, and did a reading, and I drew literally the whole suit of swords, minus the 4. I think I was missing the 4 and the 9. I've got it somewhere. I've written it down somewhere still. I drew the whole swords, and then I knew that my worries were sort of founded. That obviously the person was in a bad place at the time. Yes, I understand that my example was a bit extreme, perhaps, but you know, your experiences obviously are different to mine. So perhaps you've encountered a situation, or you know, depending on the way you read.
Well,
We all read differently anyway, so.
well, addressing the issue of if you see a situation which you feel that you cannot change, I mean, you can always change the client's perspective of it, as you were saying with the Ten of Swords. You know, oh, you get through it well. I mean that.
Their understanding of the
Yeah,
situation.
I mean that is, I think, the biggest gift a reader can give people. Really, like, yes, shit will happen, but you come through it, and I think that's, to a lot of people, that's very valuable encouragement. I don't know. So yeah, there's still some stuff you can change for the better, even if it is just the perspective.
Yes, because not only action, I believe that it, not only all actions have consequences, but also thoughts are very real, or can be very real.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's sort of even giving that positive spin for that person, even in it'll help them tackle all the shit they're going through. You know.
I find that a lot of time the cards not only are very straight, but they also, as you were saying, they tell you things that are not very pleasant. You might want to pull a certain card for you or for someone else, and then you'll find out that you get the one that you thought you had that niggling feeling and that was the issue, but you didn't want to acknowledge it, and then the cards will acknowledge it for you. I find them very straight in that. But what I was interested in, if you actually had any particular experiences that you wanted to share of examples of free will or predestination as such. Could be for yourself, it doesn't have to be for someone else, or where you were successful in, say, for example.
Well, I've personally had 2 relationship readings for different people. One was, using that example again, it was, you know, will this relationship happen, right? And then it would say, oh, it could happen, it'll be okay, it won't be perfect. And then the other one was, but it could also not happen at all. And then the other one, it was like, no matter what you do, you will be with this person.
Okay.
And
what was the outcome? What was
the outcome was the Princess of Cups.
Oh.
You know, and yeah, you will be with this type of person, and which I guess in that scenario,
The questions were different, though, right?
I think the first question was like, will I be with this specific person, and then the other one was like, oh, will I find this a relationship, and then it's just the way
Did I
it's
do
done.
tricky though, because if you're not careful, will I be? Yeah, well, you'll be on the train with that person. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you? I don't know. It depends on how you phrase the questions.
Yeah, well, the first one you said, well, that was a yes or no question.
Yeah.
If you asked it that way,
Will it?
So,
Will it?
will I or will I not, or won't I?
Yeah, but it gave very specifically 2 different possibilities that could happen. And the other one was like, oh, this is the only way.
Was it the same person? That did
No,
it?
different
So
people,
could it be?
different people.
Is it possible that the actual first person was more, not worried, but more aware of the fact of giving you, like, such answer, like, yes, no matter what you're going to do, it's something maybe he or she wasn't comfortable with?
I
That?
don't get what you're trying to say. Sorry.
So if I got it right, second person told you this is that going to happen.
No. The second reading.
Second reading
yeah.
was like, this is going to
This is
happen.
gonna happen.
The first one,
was like it could or could not.
Could
and
or
this
could not. Maybe they're saying that the reader perhaps
Wasn't sure
wasn't.
themselves.
Yeah.
No, this was completely in the cards. There wasn't, you know.
But it was like reflecting sort of like they had a choice to be in it or not be in it, maybe. So that's
But then,
maybe that's why they're getting both.
I mean,
answers.
philosophically, we all have the choice, don't we? But then, for
Yeah,
the
but
second reading, the cards were like, "Oh, you will
No,
be in
you
it."
don't necessarily have the choice if that partner who they're inquiring about is like, no way, right? But if that partner is open to having a relationship with them, but they have now the choice to either be in it or not be in it, then you could get an answer that's going to give both, right?
Okay.
Yeah, because the other person also attitude to it, involvement. It could be the other person is completely detached and knowing. And also, it brings up another question. In terms of tarot cards for the full deck, do you think there are some cards that are more likely to indicate a clear outcome than others, or do you think any cards can do that?
Majors, I think, are ones that we kind of can't.
As personal opinion is, I find that sometimes if I'm doing, which I rarely do, a Celtic cross or anything like that, and I get an outcome like 6 of Pentacles, I'm like, me, it's not very clear.
What about tens?
As an yeah, tens, well, depends what the question is, I suppose. Yeah, that's like, okay, let's move on, sort of.
Depends what you mean by outcome as well. I mean, what outcomes are, you know, just like a moment, really, and then you move on to the next moment. There are no clear outcomes in life, are there? They're just...
But do you feel that some cards are strongly more, like, stronger indicate?
Well, the majors are stronger than the minors. Does that sound like a...
Yeah. Because for example, because for me the minors are stuff that we do. So, like say if the Ten of Swords came up, I'd think, okay, you're feeling like this, but you know you can deal with it. But if the Tower came up, I'd be like, you're fucked. You know, or like.
But I don't know, because I've been pulling the Tower a lot lately, and I still don't understand it because it doesn't relate at all, and it keeps coming out.
No. Good.
No.
It's just to draw the example, like how I would read the difference. Like they're both kind of destruction, but then I would read the Tower as
Yeah,
a bit more inevitable than the Ten of Swords.
It's an abrupt change of state, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not actually, maybe, people could argue perhaps that it's not about, really so much about what the next state will be, but just the dynamism and scope of the change.
I guess then you go also into timings, because then when you get a certain
It's
outcome.
more about rebuilding more than being destructive.
At the time of happening, it can be, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, because of its placement and because you have the star, right? The star's
After, yeah.
Yeah.
so it's kind of like
Well,
it's already.
the
kind of-
star is. I mean, there's Tower destructions. The star is like now there's room to build, I guess.
Yeah, so maybe it's that kind of that.
But the Tower is
Kind of
itself,
the same point.
as that block, is the destruction. The rebuilding comes later. You know. That's how I see it, anyway.
But that was, yeah, I mean, obviously it's personal. I mean, some people might feel that every card is perfectly clear for that particular situation, no matter if it's a minor or a major. I feel the major, like you said, they're a bit clearer because they're stronger. Sometimes I think when you get lower cards, it's perhaps that the matter is not resolved as an outcome yet and it still needs to be revised, or depends. But yeah, I think it's very interesting how people react totally different to the actions of other people with readers and non-readers, because my main concern was, okay, what is my power in influencing other people as a reader? And I think it's quite high, because people sort of look up to you, even if they are free will believers, free thinkers, and you know, if they come in for a reading for whatever reason, they obviously need some sort of advice from the reader. So the fact that you can sort of project your beliefs, your belief system, your life experiences, which is what I meant at the beginning with projection. How much of it is the reader actually projecting into the reading and the cards when you're reading for someone else, and therefore then influencing their outcome? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, the cards are images of archetypes in a story. So when we lay out a set of images of archetypes in a story, we present a story to the person. And there's an element, so something has been fixed that wasn't fixed before, which is that these images have appeared, telling a particular story in a particular order. But how the story is interpreted is still open, and how the person sees those images. So it's got a bit of both. But in terms of our responsibility, in terms of, I think it comes up every time we do a reading. And I think if you talk to people who have had readings done, it's critical, isn't it, the question between free will and fate and influence. When we look at tarot, it's quite powerful. And I think tarot was originally called the game of tarot, and that's the game that people are playing with and that people are fascinated by. And one reason that you go back to it. So I don't even know if anyone has the
There's so
answers.
many little issues about that, isn't there? Because it's like
it's quite profound, really.
when you do online readings, then you haven't got that. People, unless you're sending them the images, which you generally don't because of copyright issues, but they're not there, so they're not seeing. You could be using your own deck, whatever deck you pick, so they're just getting the online reading. When, like you're saying, you go to a fair, psychic fair, you've got 6 tarot readers. The free will acts in you as a customer, as a client, going around the fair, looking at the readers and go, oh, I like that one. I'm going to go to that. But why that and not that? That's the free will, because you make a conscious choice. Sorry,
I just had a thought. Sartre obviously writes tons about free will and determinism. Two of the things he talks about, actually, one is constraint. I'll come back to in a minute. The other is advice. And he says that advice is a bit of a red herring when talking about free will, because if you say to somebody, I would go and see somebody you trust, like the lawyer, the cop, the priest, the doctor, or they'll give you good advice, that person will subconsciously look for the doctor, priest, lawyer, whatever it is, whose views he already knows are
good.
fit the decision he's already decided to take. So that's...
That depends on the individual, though, because not everyone is so...
I think you're coming across to what I'm trying to say, and maybe I'm not actually expressing myself correctly, which is possible. It's exactly that. It's not that you actively go out to deceive or to give bad advice or wrong advice or whatever. You can't do that. The cards actually do tell a story, and the cards will come out straightforward. Most all the time, I say. But there is that underlying, like you're saying, the advice. If you know, you're going to someone that you know. Yes, you got the free will to choose at a fair or at any other event. You like the look of someone, or maybe they look kinder, or maybe they just dress how you like, then, whatever. Or some, I find as a woman, that a lot of women prefer female readers rather than male, but that's not a given, it's just subjective. So yes, what you're saying is just, they look up at you mostly. And you have the power to take this tool that you have, the cards, tell a story, do a reading, and then with that particular reading, you're influencing the person. Somehow, you are taking an active approach to that person's life. Your action will create a consequence. Yes, of course, as Henry said, the person can go and say, it's all right, the person can go and say, well, yeah, that was a good reading, but I'm going to do it my way. Fine. But you have put thoughts, ideas into...
Well, but there's also the issue that they... Sorry.
Also, it's an emotional experience. For me, anyway, as well. I find that you kind of merge with a person in a way that you don't. When I do a reading or have a reading done, feel different talking to that person than I would a normal person, you know, on a normal level. Because you're opening up some parts of your psyche, of sharing something. It's very intimate.
And mind you, with what I'm saying, I'm not suggesting that anyone is doing anything wrong or being unethical or anything. It's just opening up the ideas of how much we influence free will of other people when we actually interact with them.
To address that, but I mean, because you've been saying how, yeah, I mean, we might influence people, but at the same time, they chose to come to a tarot reader.
Because they're looking for
Yeah, because they're looking for
Well,
advice.
the same way
So-
they choose to go to a priest, to a doctor, to...
And so it's kind of your job to influence them in a way. You know, they didn't have to come to you. If they're coming to you, that means they want your advice. So you
Yeah, of
give,
course they do.
So you give them that. You know, there's no issue of. You know,
I think it's very difficult. You can't really quantify how much you influence them. It depends from person to person, how emotional. If it's a friend, of course, you're going to be more emotionally attached to them than it is someone you've never seen before. But you still, going back to the ideas and thoughts, etc., that Mike was saying, is if you believe that thoughts are real as such, so effectively when you're giving someone advice or when you're telling them something, you're putting a thought, they're thinking it, you're putting a thought into their head, so that thought will stay. Regardless of the fact that they might have a personality type that they say, oh, I don't like that, I'm going to do my own way.
Yeah, because I think it's the potency also that's attached to a tarot reading. So obviously we influence, or possibly influence one another all the time, just by being in one another's presence, and that's ordinary. But a tarot reading, doing something like that, is this, it's kind of this magical thing, this special thing. So it's the potency of the situation as well. Someone might open themselves in order to access a tarot reading.
I've had readings sometimes where you go like...
Huh?
I've had readings sometimes where you go like, yeah, right, no. Not
Yeah,
doing
because
it.
it doesn't speak to you.
Yeah.
But when things are potent and speak, maybe they speak to you. See, I don't think we can. It's hard to separate what is free will, what is fate. You know, it's like the rose and the trellis, or it's hard to say which is which and to tease them apart. It's quite difficult. Isn't it? I mean, if it was easy to do it, we wouldn't. It would be obvious to us all, and we wouldn't all be sitting.
No, I think it's a huge
How do you
debate actually, because and we all think differently, of course. So the example I did in the beginning about you can change that, everyone disagreed with me pretty much, but that's fine because that's the free will of making a conscious decision. And I think there is perhaps today, in today's society, and that's just my opinion, a need for awareness on how much we actually influence people, and not just for tarot readers, for everyone out there, because especially now that people are more aware, and there are lots and lots of writers, people that writing on thoughts, and psychologists, not just, you know, like coaches and stuff. Journalists, yes.
Yeah.
On the influence of thoughts. I mean, currently reading an article on mental health. Again, sorry, I'm going back to that, but where this particular psychologist put forward that events and actions performed in our lifetime since childhood from adulthood completely influence our mental health today. They're not just biological. You weren't born to certain... it's very, very interesting to read. You probably find it very boring. It was something like 88 pages. But and so the awareness of you as a person when you're standing in front of a friend, yourself, a client, or when you're reading for a group of people sometimes, of how much you can actually influence the environment. And if you go to any fair, and I'm sure some of you have been or done psychic fairs before, you will see the particular atmosphere, and you will see people. Even if you go to something like the Mind, Body and Spirit one that has that big tent with all the tarot readers, and I can't remember the name of the school. They usually have like 15 readers just sitting there doing readings the whole day, and there are queues, and there's people picking. And I think part of the picking is that A, the free will, and B, their choice to influence the subsequent action of what they're going to do. It is actually bigger than probably just sitting and talking as such, but that was pretty much my aim, to actually say, well, how aware are you of how much you influence someone around you when you do a reading? And can you change it willingly as well?
It's interesting that you make that note of how people choose their reader. Because it's like they're trying to choose their fate, but yet they're putting their fate in someone else's hands in a way by saying, coming for a reading.
And that comes to what you were saying, that everything is intertwined.
No, I mean...
So that you got the fate and the free will that both intertwined somehow.
We're probably trying to choose somebody who will be kind about it, rather than
Well, there's on the flip side. On the flip side, it could be your subconscious being, you need a smack in the face, and I'm gonna choose the reader, you know, who will be honest with you. Yeah. You know?
yeah, like you do. Well, if we, you know, if we were going to do that, we could ask our friends and relatives what they think of us.
But I mean, if you
your friends and relatives could be
readers
stupid.
And you went to, and you got a reading from each of those 3 people,
Yeah.
what would be the difference?
If you ask the same question, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I've done that before. I can't. We did that when my friend before he left for Canada. We met at his house at dinner one night, and we did exactly that. It was about 7 of us at dinner, and then we're like, okay, I'll ask one person ask a question, and the 6 of you do the reading on the same question and see what comes out. It was amazing, because a lot of the same cards actually came out. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them came out, and yet, although the readings had some similarities, it was totally different. Totally different. And he was taking notes, and he just take, okay, I'm taking that from you, and I'm taking that from you, and
Right.
you know. But it was very, very interesting. That's a very interesting experiment to do. Same question, however many people you got, try it out. Even 2 can work with 2. You can have 2 people. You ask one question, one person does the reading, and I guarantee you that you might get some similarity and even the same outcome, but in a different way. And both people will interpret it different, which I think is also when people pick up, it could be that they do want to smack in the face, or it could be that they're picking up the part of themselves that they're recognizing in that particular, or feel they empathize in that particular reader. What time is it? I've been talking too much. So, anything else? Sorry, because I was going to say, why don't you try that? Because that's such a great idea.
Well, I was just going to add to that idea. I've seen people, when you read for yourself, especially, what you can try and do something similar is that you ask the same question but using different tools. So you can ask tarot, the I Ching.
Oh yeah, that's another idea. Or different decks as well.
Yeah. See if they come up with the same answer.
You can do it with a pendulum and ask the question.
I'd like to do the pendulum and then the reading, like with cards.
Okay.
They come and go, yeah. No, someone done a reading on me. And with angel cards, and something came up about discernment, yeah, with angel cards, and so someone actually done it on me, you know. But then when I went home and I done my own cards, the same card came up as well. No tarot card, yeah, but
with the same deck. Or with a different deck.
Different people. So I done one for myself, someone done on me, and the same message came through.
You're the common factor.
And I was thinking something else as well, yeah. You know when we think about past, present, and future, and there's this theory about time could be going the other way around. You know, instead of us influencing the future, it could be in the future, whoever we are in the future is influencing the past, And there are several ways of getting there to that point. And when we choose one of them, the other ones collapses. And several readers can give us several paths of going there. And we stick to one and we go there, but it's a future event influencing us. You know, how we get there.
So if you were in the situation that we were just saying, you know when you ask a question and 6 people give you the same reading,
Yeah.
based on that, how would you pick which you would go with? Because obviously 6 people are going to give you sort of different, even, you know, they're going to read differently for you. How would you choose which one to go?
Would you know the reader, or
Would you know, yeah.
Would they be strangers?
I would just, I don't know.
Yeah, because it's difficult, isn't it? And I'm thinking what you're saying, you're thinking parallel universes, really, where you're everywhere at the same time in different times.
Well, that's quantum physics.
That's quantum,
Yeah.
Why don't you guys try? Now, try it out. Pair in 2, 3, whatever you want, and do the same question, and 2 people or 3 people do it differently, and see. Take a note. Are the same cards coming out? Are similar or close cards coming out?
You know, it would be interesting to do an event like that doesn't really relate directly to any of us, but like something that's global.
Mm.
And then
Yeah,
we
you can
read-
do
and
that.
then we could all do a reading.
Yeah, I recently did a reading on to predict the Scottish referendum, just for fun.
Yeah, I
And,
got it wrong.
Yeah, I
got it
thought it was a
wrong.
yes. I got a
I got
tower
a yes,
card.
yeah.
I was like, okay, ooh, it's
I
happening.
got a clear yes as well, and it was a no. But then
That's-
again, it was close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were definite change. There was actually more segregation because now, I mean, because David Cameron gave a speech, was saying, well, Scottish will they have their own parliament and all that stuff, so England will have also, so Scots can't vote in our policy. So there is kind of a more separation.
That's a great idea, Heather. I'll let the people here choose if you want to do a global reading and then take it from there, or if you want to do the same question sheet what's come up to you. And then let me know.
So just ask, we ask any question that we want.
Yeah, any
We'll
question.
be glad to
Society, you know, I'm going to get that job and then 2 people. Yeah.
I love these cheerful subjects.
And thank you very much. I just realised as I was talking that it kind of got bigger. And I thought I was digging a bit of a hole there. So yeah, also if you haven't fed the piggies are on the table by the way. So. Thank you guys.